Welcome back to the report. The Sri Lankan government's victory in 2009 over the liberation tigers of Tamil Eelam gave control of the entire country to the government for the first time since 1983 and won President Rajapaksa popular political support. It also, however, drew criticism for the huge civilian death toll in the final stages of the war. Afzal Ahmed has this report.
Leading British MPs have urged the European Union to remove preferential trade tariffs from Sri Lanka if it failed to address human rights concerns. In a report published by the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee, Sir Richard Ottaway MP said that the UK government must negotiate with EU partners to remove trade concessions from Sri Lanka if the government of Sri Lanka continues to deny the UN investigating team access into the country. Sri Lanka has refused to cooperate with a United Nations human rights investigation into war crimes allegedly committed by both the government and separatist Tamil rebels during the conflict that ended in 2009. Britain was instrumental in persuading the UN Human Rights Council to adopt the resolution that established the inquiry. The UN claims that about 40,000 civilians were killed in the final weeks of the 26-year conflict, mostly by the army. But Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa dismissed the probe as politically motivated and threatened possible legal action against anyone testifying before the inquiry. In a statement to delegates at the two-day South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation Summit in Nepal yesterday, the President stated, "Human rights should be recognized by all as a moral and ethical concept rather than as a political tool. Sadly, however, we are witnessing motivated political agendas being thrust by extra-regional entities on some countries in our region in the guise of human rights. Intervention in such form is being attempted with scant regard to the structures and cultural traditions of societies and ground realities." The EU is Sri Lanka's largest export destination, accounting for 36% of Sri Lanka's total exports, where sanctions would significantly affect the economy. While the EU has temporarily withdrawn some trade concessions, Sri Lanka still remains a beneficiary of the generalized scheme of preferences, which allows developing country exporters to pay less or no duties on their exports to the EU. But with mounting international pressure, will the EU impose further sanctions which inevitably will affect the ordinary population in Sri Lanka? Afzal Ahmed, The Report.
To discuss this, I'm joined by Azath Salley, who's Muslim Tamil National Alliance representative, and Irfan Iqbal, who's chief editor of Sonikar. Welcome to the programme, both of you. Azath, the UN aren't getting the cooperation that they want out of the president. Why?
Actually speaking, what the UN wanted, the president, is accountability. They wanted an in-house investigation into the whole affair, which the Sri Lankan government had not done it. After that, it had to go international, and now the Sri Lankan government is not cooperating. That is the deadlock that is there. So what I feel is a change of government could do the internal investigation, and then whatever accusation the international community has against the Sri Lankan government has to be looked into. We have to see who is wrong and who is right. I think that we have to give a fair hearing to everybody.
Well, before that happens, Irfan, it looks as if there's going to be, well, there certainly are calls for economic sanctions. Do you think that they will take place?
I don't think, because what we have to look for is how effective it is going to be. Now, for an example, EU has imposed an import ban on Sri Lankan fishery. The problem is, now today they have signed an agreement with Russia to export. So there is an alternative way to do things. So unless otherwise the right channel and it has been imposed in the right way, where UN has to take effect, I think it will be too difficult.
Azath, do you think even if the sanctions weren't economically effective, perhaps they should still be imposed as a symbolic kind of sign of the distrust and the disapproval of the international community?
This is just the beginning, and the EU has put this ban, and also they have lifted the ban on the LTT. This is a very big issue that we are facing. And what we feel in the opposition is that the Rajapaksa government did not do anything to speak to the EU not to lift the ban. As I feel, the LTT leader now is KP. This leader was arrested and brought from, they say, Thailand, When he was brought down to Sri Lanka, they were talking about 27 ships being there. They were talking about all the foreign bank accounts that were there. And after this ban is lifted and the leader is being with the government, we don't know what is happening between the government and the LTD leader. Actually speaking, whatever has to be done to the people of the north, because even the goal that was taken by LTD, that every family has to give 2.5 sovereigns or 1.5 sovereigns, whatever it is today with the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. All what the LTD took, and whatever the resources that were in the LTD banks, also in Sri Lankan government's hand. So up to today, this has not been exposed. Now the Sri Lankan government has told that these are the things that we have recovered. The 27 ships are running in these waters. That is the income that is coming into the country. Nothing has been told, and it has been a huge secret between the LTD so-called leader KP and the Sri Lankan government. So I think with 8th January, the change of the regime, lot of things are going to come out, and we can see those things are put into implementation, and especially the name of the country, actually speaking, the reputation that we have internationally is today gone. Sri Lanka being a very friendly country, a country that has been very close to the EU, very close to America, very, very close to most of the countries. But today, we have been looked upon as a very bad state and a failed state. So that image has to change, and lot of things with lot of new thinking and new leadership that we can look forward to see that the EU and all the other countries, especially the United Nations, with the Human Rights Commission going against the Sri Lankan government, will have a change.
Britain's, if you think about how Britain is seen, the British government is seen domestically, it prides itself on its human rights record, and it's now the British government which is calling for some of these sanctions. Is that seen in quite the same way in Sri Lanka? Because often, abroad, the British are seen in a very different light. They have a long colonial record, and it's a bloody and disreputable record.
Yeah, I think as at present, people of Sri Lanka, the general public, do not have a great sense or great understanding of what is going on outside and what is going to happen from outside. Because whatever happens or what has been told to them, to the administration, has been portrayed in a different way. Like the Western countries are trying to impose things because they don't like the development of the country.
So something like you were saying that the fishing quotas have been got, or the fishing sanctions have been got round by opening up a deal with Russia. Would that be something that would be popularly well received?
Of course.
So in other words, the sanctions might not work to undermine the government, but might work to gain it popular support. Do you think, Azath?
Actually speaking, the Sri Lankan government is working for the aspirations of the majority community. They are always looking at these things for an election. There is 4 words that the Rajapaksa regime or the Rajapaksa family uses is the NGO, UN and diaspora, LTT. These 4 words will be used only during election. Mr. Rajapaksa will come on stage and say, my dear majority people, I have been sacrificing my life for this country. First thing is also country, second is also my country, third is also my country. That is how he dashes himself. But nothing was done to the country. Country's image internationally is gone. Country's image internationally ruined. So all what we need is a bigger cooperation with all countries, because Sri Lanka hosted the Commonwealth Summit, right? And the Commonwealth chairman is the president, and this election being violated, I think he's not even fit to hold the position as Commonwealth head.
I mean, Azath's given a pretty good impersonation of what the rhetoric might be like there, but will that work? Is that going to work for them in this snap election that's been called?
Well, I don't think people are tired of what's been happening around the country. They know there are some sort of developments taking place, but has it been received, or are the general public getting the benefit out of it? It is questionable. So I think we've been hearing reports from rural areas where people are mourning about their rise of cost of living and the unemployment. Things are happening very badly, but for certain extent developments are carried over as well. But then it is mainly based on cosmopolitan areas where things are not as expected in rural areas, whereas still the excuse being that we are developing slowly after the end of the 30-year-long war.
And how is the end of that war now seen in Sri Lanka? Because, I mean, most people who watched it from here remember it as an incredibly bloody and brutal suppression in which mostly the Tamils were the victims.
As I told you earlier also, 5 years after the war, where is the freedom? The people were suffering in the hands of the LTT. People are now suffering in the hands of the government. It's worse than what the LTT was doing. The people have no freedom to speech. People have no freedom for movement. Everybody is being watched. The whole country is militarized because the whole thing is being looked after by the Rajapaksa family. So this is why, if it's individual ministries that we can talk and do whatever we can. But here the whole family is involved in this mechanism. So militarization is by the Defense Secretary himself. So people have a fear. It is the fear psychosis that is being spread around. Now even today...
So let me ask you, is that your picture of it as well?
I think it is, I would say on the other way, it is breaking up. Now that I think Mr. Azath Salley is part of the broader coalition, which is bringing up a new, common candidate for the presidential election, I think it is breaking up. Yes, of course, developing countries like ours, Sri Lanka mainly, where political corruption is high, the ordinary people do have a certain level of fear when it comes to talking against the people who are in power. So I think it's a general aspect in most of the South Asian countries, as unfortunately it is the same in Sri Lanka.
Okay. And most probably, one more to add to this, Sri Lanka is becoming more a Chinese colony. The Chinese are controlling, and now we got information that 18 countries China is thinking of having naval bases. And they have very clearly said it's the Hambantota harbour. But the Sri Lankan government says no. But that's a legal document that is available. So now if you take Colombo, the most important city next to the harbour, 500 acres of the sea is being now filled to have a Chinese city. And nobody knows. Parliament has questioned this, and up to now we have not got a proper answer from the government what they intend doing.
Okay, well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, gentlemen, but thanks for that overview of a fast-changing situation in Sri Lanka.